Hey everyone, Brandon here. Regional forms are such an intuitive and natural addition to Pokemon that it almost feels like they've always been a part of the series.
But unfortunately, there were 6 whole generations where we did not have these incredible forms.
So what if there had been regional forms in those past generations? Along with my buddy Hoops and Hip Hop, let's explore what they could have looked like.
This is a concept we have explored on my channel in the past, and speaking of, we will also be taking a look at what mega evolutions of regional forms could look like over there as well.
And I'll be joining him over there, so make sure to go check that out after this video. The natural place to begin is at the beginning, and for Pokemon, that's the Kanto region. Ironically, this was actually the last concept I came up with for this video. When looking at Kanto for inspiration for a regional form, I tried to think of what differentiates it from the other Japan-based regions, since I had already used quite a bit of Japanese inspiration with the other forms in this video. That's when it hit me. Look closely. You know what Kanto has absolutely none of?
Box legendaries? A battle tower? Biodiversity?
Well, yes, all of those things, but I meant the other B word, beaches. So that had me thinking what Pokemon would have to adapt to a region without them, which of course led me to the creation of Cantonian Sandygast, the rock heap Pokemon that I worked with Deem's Fakemon to create. With a category like that, naturally they are rock ghost type, a type that is yet to be used in the official games. Given Pokemon tends to use regional forms to tackle unique type combinations, I thought these forms would be especially fitting.
So how exactly did it adapt to Kanto? What made them become the rock type?
Well, when some trainers from Alola, Galar, and Paldea visited and released their Sandygast into the wild, probably some Masuda method shiny hunters, the Pokemon had no place to call home. So they worked their way inland into the various caves of the region, such as Rock Tunnel. With that cave letting out into the ghostly, soul-filled Lavender Town and its Pokemon Tower, this was a perfect place for Sandygast to reside. So much so that they began to resemble the graves of the tower.
And they even begin to resemble the tower itself when they evolve into Cantonian Palossand, the rock tower Pokemon. It is fueled by the souls of deceased Pokemon within the Pokemon Tower, harboring those spirits just like the tower itself.
The incense on this line's heads emits a spiritual energy that draws in people and Pokemon near it. All the better to harvest their life energy with, my dear.
As sort of a viewer of these forms myself, I really enjoy the backstory of how these Pokemon adapted to Kanto, since a Sandygast with no sand is naturally going to need to adapt a little bit. You couple that with a unique type combination and a Gen 7 Pokemon appearing in the Gen 1 region with a whole new form, and this results in exactly the kind of change that I would love to see in a Kanto-based game.
And embracing change can be both hard in Fakemon design as well as in life itself. Talking it out with a professional is sometimes necessary to help work through that change, and today's sponsor BetterHelp makes doing that a whole lot easier. Over these past 2 years, I have seen a lot of change in my life. After my divorce and during my journey into being a single parent for the first time, especially as someone with ADHD, I found therapy incredibly helpful in redefining myself and understanding how to better navigate life. This is why I'm a huge advocate for therapy and why I'm excited to be working with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is not just another therapy service, it's a place where over 4 million people, including myself, have found support and guidance. Their approach to matching you with a licensed therapist specializing in your specific needs is what sets them apart. And they do this quickly, usually within 48 hours. Therapy through BetterHelp is a total game changer. It's more than just talking through your problems. It's about understanding yourself, developing strategies, and a plan to live a better, more sustainable life. And the best part is you can do it all through your phone or computer, through calls, video chats, or messaging. It is the easiest and most comfortable way to start your therapy journey. You don't have to keep things inside or worry about opening up to your friends or family. You get to speak to a professional that's there just for you. If you're going through a tough time, feeling stuck, or just want to understand yourself better, BetterHelp might be what you need. Use my link betterhelp.com/pragmagic, which you can find in the description, to get 10% off your first month. The first step is often the most important, so take it with BetterHelp. Thank you so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it.
We're moving on to the Johto region now, and one thing that Johto is chock full of is Japanese influence. From the more rural landscape to the bell and what was once the brass tower to the Ecruteak Dance Theater, which is home to the Kimono Girls and also our next set of regional forms.
Meet Jotonian Gothorita, the performer Pokemon, and Jotonian Gothitelle, the floral body Pokemon. Both are psychic grass type, and I worked with an artist Astray to bring them to life. These Pokemon and the kimono girls themselves are inspired by the traditional Japanese art of geisha. They are performing artists and entertainers trained in dancing, singing, music, hosting, and conversation, with Gothorita being more inspired by a Maiko, or apprentice geisha. Kimonos commonly have some form of floral element adorning them, which inspired the grass typing.
These two have to learn Petal Dance, right?
Oh, most definitely, along with pretty much every dance-related move and sing. Just like the geisha, these Pokemon are proficient in all forms of music and assist the kimono girls of Ecruteak.
Something interesting in this hypothetical scenario could be that Gothita remains the same between both Johto and Kanto, but then Johto has these forms upon it evolving, and then Kanto could have the Univin forms, given how industrial Kanto is in comparison, and then also the gothic Lolita fashion style that these Pokemon are based on originated in Harajuku, Tokyo, which equates to the Kanto region in the Pokemon world. Kanto and Johto have always been very intentionally opposite of one another. There's a big dichotomy between the industry of Kanto versus the history of Johto, and Kanto's urban feel versus Johto's more rural feel. So giving a Johtonian form to a Pokemon that takes inspiration from a Kanto-based area in real life is actually perfect and fits in really well with the theming of these regions, in my opinion.
And a single region that exemplifies dichotomy is Hoenn, with 2 different evil teams, 2 pseudo-legendaries, and almost half the map made up of water.
I don't know, I would probably have to say it's closer to like 78%.
Regardless, there is too much water, so whatever Pokemon moved here from another region would definitely have to adapt to both land and sea. Something that could be considered semi-aquatic would work well here.
How about a snake? They obviously reside on land, but most of them tend to be able to swim as well.
Great idea! A big old snake hailing from the Galar region I think would fit perfectly. So here is Hoennian Sandaconda, the coral snake Pokemon, a ground water type that I worked with Trainer Rex on.
Its category is also exactly what it's inspired by, the coral snake, with its design literally having a coral pattern to it. This form in particular is more specifically based on the Okinawa coral snake, which is a prefecture in Japan that Hoenn takes some direct inspiration from. You would be able to find this Sandaconda as a less common encounter on the beachside areas and the water routes of Hoenn. Additionally, its rich pink coloration comes from the Corsola that it consumes, kinda like how flamingos also get their signature pink color from their diet too, and also kinda like how the Marini line also eats Corsola. Huh, no wonder Galarian Corsola and Cursula exist.
The bright coloration and shape of Sandaconda's body put together is also partly inspired by life preservers or intertubes, which I definitely thought of Regitube while crafting this design. The original Sandaconda's nostrils are reminiscent of a double-barrel shotgun, so we made the nose and fangs of the Hoennian version a lot more squared off to look like a water gun. It's surf or nothing.
With a typing like that, it definitely fits the vibe of the region and even the box legendaries for that matter.
I could also see it being used by both Team Magma and Team Aqua admins, with snakes generally being associated with evilness, which is kind of funny given its wave-like eyebrows make it look a lot less angry than its Galarian counterpart, and in general, it acts a lot more chill. I guess it must be that subtropical island lifestyle.
And on that note, I think having a Pokemon that both of the evil teams use would be a nice piece of environmental storytelling, I guess you could say, that essentially adds to the idea that neither team is really fighting for the good side and are both flawed in their aspirations. So Hoennian Sandaconda could fit in as well with Hoenn's story as it could with the region itself.
From the very bottom of Japan, we move to the very top with the Sinnoh region, which technically has its own set of regional forms thanks to old Hisui.
Yeah, but we're still gonna give some Pokemon Sinnohan forms though, right?
Do I look like I want to be eaten by the comment section today?
Good point. So what do you have for us?
Well, just like Kanto, when looking at Sinnoh, I noticed something it didn't have.
A good remake?
Of course, but what it majorly lacked was Fire-type Pokemon. I mean, Diamond and Pearl only added 4 new Fire types and had access to 9 Fire types total, and one of the lines was exclusive to the post-game. Even the Fire-type Elite Four member only had 2 Fire types on his team until Platinum came around. Deep breaths, Brandon. Remember your therapy. So let's give old Flint here another Pokemon to use.
So what kind of Pokemon would adapt well to Sinnoh's environment? that? Well, crab Pokemon could certainly fit the bill, so much so in fact that there is even a form of convergent evolution called carcinization, in which non-crab crustaceans develop crab-like features because they are so evolutionarily favorable.
So a crab Pokemon, but which one?
How about one that is in need of a bit of redemption?
Yes, Crabrawler and Crabominable. Great idea. So, allow me to introduce Sinnoh Crabrawler, the dirty boxing Pokemon, a fire dark type that I also worked with Trainer Rex on. Sinnoh Crabrawler is inspired by a kind of crab and dish found in Hokkaido, the Hanasaki crab. This crab is named after the port it was found in off the coast of Nemuro, which Sunny Shore City is based on.
What a perfect place to find a fire type, in a city that's named after the sun.
My thoughts exactly. The Hanasaki crab is notable because of how bright red it becomes after boiling it, so I thought that fit the fire type perfectly. As it is a form of king crab, it has spikes all over it, which translated into these spiked fists on Sinnoh Crabrawler that are reminiscent of brass knuckles, which inspired its category as the dirty boxing Pokemon, and its dark typing. This Pokemon has a fiery temper and gets steamed really easily. Literally. Steam will blow out of its head if it gets angry enough.
Sounds like Crabrawler could use a soothe bell. But no, for real, the fire typing translating from this Pokemon's hot temper is great, and it provides great justification for a crab Pokemon to have the fire type. What about its evolution though? Would it still evolve via an Ice Stone into Crabominable, or maybe when you level it up on Mount Coronet, similar to how you evolve Crabrawler in Alola?
Actually, no. When I said this line deserved redemption, I meant it. While I'm a fan of Crabominable, many in the community see it as super goofy looking or a missed opportunity. So instead, when given a Firestone, Crabrawler evolves into Crabroiler, the spiny crab Pokemon. Now that's a crab Pokemon. Crabominable was based on the abominable snowman, aka the Yeti, so I figured a new evolution should also channel some kind of monster. And in Japan, that's most definitely an Oni. The tusks and shell shape of Crabroiler come together to look like the teeth of an Oni, all the while referencing a kind of crab also found in Japan that inspired a yokai, the Heikigani or the samurai crab. Their shells resemble the face of an angry samurai and are actually thought to have the souls of dead samurai within them.
Wow, that sounds, brutal.
About as brutal as the swing of Crabroiler's mighty pincers, or I guess clubs, as they're shaped just like the spiked clubs commonly used by the Oni. Very fitting of the dark type.
As someone who has openly criticized Crabominable myself, I do really enjoy how giving Crabrawler a whole new evolution attempts to give this Pokemon some more love to redeem it a little bit, like we said earlier. I also really enjoy that it has some Japanese elements in its design to reflect how this Pokemon has adapted to the Japan-inspired Sinnoh region.
And speaking of, we move from the Japan-based regions to a region based on the old US of A, Unova. Looking back at the decks for Unova, given they did a soft reboot of the series at this point, they really could have leaned more into having Pokemon inspired by Native American culture. Like we had Sigilyph and Braviary, but that was really about it.
To be fair, Unova is specifically based on New York City, which is a melting pot of many different cultures.
Fair, and this was a couple generations before Pokemon were more inspired by the real-life region the games were based on. I think in a future remake or perhaps a Legends kind of game, I could see them really honing in on some indigenous influences. So I looked into some of the native peoples closer to New York, the northern US, and southern Canada, and I came upon the tale of Gibiabos. Believed to be the ruler of the underworld or lord of the dead by native peoples including the Algonquin, Chippewa, and Meskwaki. Gibiabos is also said to take the form of a wolf, sometimes a timber wolf aka the Algonquin wolf.
A canine god of the underworld? That sure sounds familiar. Almost like there is that exact same kind of thing on the opposite side of the Atlantic Ocean.
Or in Pokemon's case, in the Sinnoh region, with Riolu and Lucario who are based on Anubis, the jackal-headed Egyptian god of funerary rites and guide to the underworld, not the Pal. So all put together, you get Unovan Riolu and Lucario, an ice type and ice ghost type that I worked with JJmons on.
Timberwolves do typically live in snowy areas, and Unova also only had about 7 ice types, so there's definitely room for some more.
A bit of a death trigger warning here, but the ice type also plays into the death aspect as dead bodies are typically cold, as well as the Norse version of the underworld, Helheim, being a cold, icy place. The aura aspect is kept with these two Pokemon as well, because what is an aura but another name for someone's spirit or soul? Their fur coats are now longer and fluffier to match their new environment of Twist Mountain. The previously black bundles of hair and their masks have been changed to be more reminiscent of Algonquin ceremonial face painting and dress.
Rather than the aura of people in Pokemon, these two can see the spirits of people in Pokemon who have passed on. They are said to help guide souls to the afterlife who are stuck on this mortal coil for whatever reason. Overall, I think these designs turned out really great personally. I love tackling a super popular and iconic Pokemon like Lucario with a regional variant. Ice Ghost is a typing that really changes things up for it compared to regular Lucario, which is great, and the inspirations, as you said, translate over really well. With Unova taken care of though, I guess that leaves us with only one region left.
Well, you're right. Time flies when you're making regional forms, so let's head to Kalos. Europe has some absolutely bonkers mythical creatures that I really wanted to draw from, and one that caught my eye was that of the Stella, a pig-sized starfish that burns with the heat of an actual star. Well, maybe not an actual star, but it is still insanely hot. Of course, this would apply to the singular starfish Pokemon line we have. So here are Colossian Staryu and Starmie, Fire and Fire Psychic type that I worked with Fakemon to create. We made the crystal on these two more orb-shaped to reflect a star or sun, and the coloration is meant to look more like a fire or sunstone, which you would use to evolve Staryu into Starmie instead of a waterstone.
Cantonian Staryu already had a light coloration that becomes a deep purple when evolving. So for these two, we kept that intact, but with a twist. Kalosian Staryu is brightly colored like a matured star, but Starmie is a deep black and red to reflect a red giant, a dying star that will leave behind a black hole, and is why this Starmie is much thinner than its Cantonian equivalent. It uses up a lot of energy to create its incredible firepower, leaving it with a smaller physique. Given that Staryu and Starmie are also water types and based on starfish, I love the idea of doing a complete 180 with them and giving them a fire type that is based on actual stars. That's the kind of thing that makes regional variants so great in the first place, and I think it works really well with these two Pokemon.
And that's all, folks. Make sure to head over to Hoop's channel to see the other video we did together. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.